Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and hit record. Is it recording? Yes, it is. Okay, so today we're gonna talk about data tables 5 and 6. Um, so some of you that haven't been like regularly attending, and I know I was sick, so I was here last week, but my brain wasn't here last week. Um, and then I was traveling, so we haven't been doing it like consistently. But I have gone over all the other data tables 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And so our last office hours, we talked about data table 3, which is all the other institutional grants on the campus. And then we also talked about research support. So not only do, if you, and I have all of these slides if you're new, and the video on my website. So if you miss a session or something, you're more than welcome to just go and listen to it there. But I also had, just like I said, I had all the information there under resources. So, what I was going to say was I like to go over when I talk about the data tables, to give you kind of a guideline where I'm going to go with this presentation. I'll give you obviously the instructions, NIH instructions. I'll talk a little bit about some things are fuzzy, right? We have gray areas in with the NIH and when it comes to instructions, and then where to hopefully find the information, and then what are your challenges and your barriers and your blockers of stuff that come up when you're finding these, trying to find details. And like for an example, research support. At UCSD, we don't seem to have one report you can run in Oracle, our financial system, to get what you need. You can get other support, but other support we know is different than research support. So it's like I can kind of send you off in one direction. Okay, you can get a majority of this information there, but then it doesn't give you all the information, right? So anyway, I'll try to help you as much as possible. And getting and obtaining data, it's just a challenge, as we all know. Okay, so today we're going to talk about publications. And so basically this is a very misconstrued. It seems like it's very upfront. Okay, it's publications of the trainees, but it doesn't want to just see the productivity of the trainees. It wants to see the productivity of the faculty member. So a lot of times if you're working on a renewal, and I can use Wilma, I'm going to give Wilma as an example here because she's working on a renewal right now. So I think you guys are in year 15 or something, but the last renewal, you had certain faculty on there. And now those faculty, for whatever they're retiring, they're not going to be on the continuing renewal. I cannot add those publications for their trainees. So for Wilma, like Dr. Cherish, I noticed he is not on your faculty mentor list going forward, but he was before, and he had prior trainees. Those publications from those trainees will not be able to be listed on the renewal. And the reason why, like, they want to see the current faculty member, their productivity for the trainee.
Oh, so I thought it was the trainees, not really the
exactly. And they do want to see that, but ultimately they want to see the productivity of their faculty member. So it's kind of unfortunate, because then you're losing out on all those publications. But you can also, the PI can write about this in the program plan saying, hey, Dr. Cherish, who was on here for many years, had a lot of productivity, but fortunately we can't list him in the tables any longer. So yeah, it's kind of, that's where when see people, I've had conflicts with PIs where like, I absolutely want these publications listed. I'm like, yeah, but that faculty member is no longer on the grant, so we can't list them. So that is just one of those things that you could run into with this. So of course, it's all in research, it's all about publication, and they want to see the authorship. And as always, with every data table, you need to summarize all this information in the program plan. So the instructions differ between a new and renewal grant. And I'll tell you, like, I work on this day in and day out. I still forget. So it's really, important that you have a copy of your data table instructions handy, because I refer to them all the time. But for a new application, if you have no prior funding, you're going to list any current pre or postdocs, depending on what type of application you have, of those trainees that would have been eligible to be appointed on the training grant if it were available for the last 10 years. That's for a new application. So for a renewal application, it's list any publications for renewal faculty, like I was just talking about, and any of those trainees that were currently actually appointed to the training grant for the last 10 years. So it gets a little tricky because sometimes you have clearly associated trainees that may be listed in your table 8 for renewal, but you can't list their publications. So again, it gets tricky. And it's just one thing that you need to be aware of. So here's the actual instructions. This is what the actual table looks like. You're going to list your faculty member, and then you're going to list the trainee name. Notice I always put the middle initials because sometimes you have, multiple people, with the same name, whether it's a current or past trainee, and then the actual trainee period. Now, this is not the trainee period that they were just on the training grant. This is the total trainee period. So for Patricia Thompson, she came into the graduate program in 2009 and she ended in 2012. So this doesn't actually sound like a PhD program since it shows short, but for this purpose, you want to put when they actually entered into the graduate program. It's not when they entered onto the training program. And then obviously when they end the trainee program, not when they come off the training program. Obviously enter the whole citation there. You don't need to have the PMCID number. Now, if you're doing it in extract, it doesn't put it in there. But if you're doing it in Word, sometimes when you copy the whole citation, it's going to show up in there. You don't have to put it in there. I mean, they're not going to cite you if, ding you if you do put it in there, but I'm just saying it's not necessary. So this is another one of these gray areas. List all the publications of resulting from their period of training or in association with the current trainee program through the completion of their degree. So obviously not before they came here. So if they come in here as a postdoc, anything that they published as a pre-doc should not be listed, right? But we all know, like when it takes a long time to get published. So say if they come in 2021, they leave in 2022, but something gets published in 2023, that really was science from 2022 when they were actually in the program. So it's going to be, the date is technically after they left. However, it is resulting from a publication when they were actually in training. So one thing here, you should always boldface the trainee's name. Some, I know PIs like the PI name bolded too. I personally don't agree with that, but that's, that's more of a programmatic thing. If there's no publications for the trainees, especially when you have a renewal, you may have certain trainees that maybe just joined the program. So you're going to have to be able to click their no publications and then give a reason. They're a new entrant or they went on a leave of absence or whatever. So you have to list that. So again, this is just reiterating what I was just talking about. Do not list publications from prior work and then arising from research arising after the completion of the program. So this is a very gray area. And I say this because sometimes you have a trainee that will leave and they'll continue to publish with their mentor. You'll notice like the mentor is still a co-author. So I've had some PIs who will say absolutely list those, even though they've been gone for 4 years, but it is still, they're still doing research, they're still publishing with their mentor. So go ahead and list it, even though they've been out of the program for 4 years. this is one of those kind of a gray areas. I personally, this is just my thing. If they are currently publishing with their mentor and the mentor is a co-author, I go ahead and list it. Just because I believe that that is truly something, it's a research production from, it's production from that research. So I would list it. Now, some are very like, no, it's been over a certain amount of time. No, I'm not going to list it. So it's again, it's up to your PI. And this is one of those things you need to communicate with your PI when you start working on a renewal, saying, hey, there's a gray area here. How do you feel about it? Most of the PIs that I work with will say, if that trainee, if their mentor is not a co-author, then leave it off. But again, it depends. Table 5. So when you actually put it in the table, you need to list it, but in alphabetical order by the faculty, and then you need to group them based on past or current trainees, and then it's in chronological order by date. So it's kind of a hassle to format this in Word, if anyone has done this in Word. So tips for gathering data. I use PubMed a lot. PubMed is great because you can go in there, you can put in the trainee name. You can do an advanced search and put in the trainee name and the mentor, which I find very helpful, especially if you have a common a trainee with a common name. And then it would show you all their publications. So I use this, a lot. So if you're doing a renewal, like Wilma, you're doing a renewal, you can look up in either my bibliography for all our PPRs that Dr. Ginsburg has put in, or you could actually go out to NIH Reporter and do an advanced search. This is all just an open source. You can put in your project number, and then you can see here are the publications associated with that grant. Now, the catch here is when a trainee is publishing that they are citing this grant. So you could go out here and see, oh, there's not that many publications, but we know there are more publications. Well, a trainee or a PI, when they are publishing, they need to be citing the federal grant that they work on. That's part of the whole publications. It's mandatory to do these to cite the peer publications. So could be a start where you could see the publications associated with your training grant. Again, normally where you can go looking for information, and you're going to have to do a couple of searches to get all the information for all the data that you need. It's not going to be all in one place, unfortunately. So you can export this data. So like I said, I like to use PubMed, and I'm going to get into in a couple slides. I like to use Extract also for the publications because it's much more helpful. So should the publications of non-citizens be included in Table 5? So no. You should, if it's a new application, it's anyone that is training grant eligible, which is citizens and permanent residents. They're the only ones that can go on a training grant. So you're only listing those. If you're doing a renewal application, you've only appointed, someone that's a training grant eligible, that's a permanent resident or a resident. So those are the only publications that you'll be putting in there. There won't be any clearly associated. So I talked about this a little bit. If a mentor is not listed as a co-author on a training publication, can it be listed? So if the instructions say if a mentor is not listed, they should not be, if the mentor is not listed, you should not be putting them on there. So no. So again, this is one of those, they want to see the productivity of the mentor. And I will, if PIs push back on me, I'll send them the instructions and say, look, this is the whole objective of this table. It's not necessarily the trainee productivity, it's the productivity of the mentor. So how many years of training is one considered to be a new entrant? That goes up to 2 years. So the first 2 years they're in training, and sometimes they may only be in training for 2 years and then they go off the training grant and they're publishing, you know, obviously after they come off, and that publication process can take up to a year. So, so that's how long they're considered a new entrant. So extract, now if you're familiar with extract, especially if you're doing your RPPRs for your table 8, if you're going in to do renewal, this is how you would do it. You would go under the trainee's name or the student's name, and you would click publications, which is down there at the bottom. And then you're going to go ahead and add in a PubMed publication, and you would go ahead and add in your faculty name, which they have to already be listed in the RTD. So you go ahead and add them in, and then you can put in the publication number. Or what I do is I will put in the first, especially if it's a very uncommon name, I'll put in the first and last name of the trainee and then hit search. And so instead of just one publication coming up, you could have all of their publications come up, and then you can just thumb through them and see, okay, and I check and see, okay, is their mentor a co-author? Yeah, okay, then I'll go ahead and add them. And I look at the year, obviously. So you can kind of add them in bulk. So I find it much easier, you know, everyone's different, I think. And then you can see it's been, the publication's been added, excuse me. And you can see that it will be, you know, next time you run the PDF of all the tables, it's going to list on there. So again, if you don't have any publications for a trainee, you'll have to click that little box, no publications, and then you'll have to give the faculty member's name and their publications, the reason why there's no publications. So you can also manually add publications. I know there are some disciplines that don't necessarily, their publications aren't always in PubMed. Like bioinformatics, I know is like that. And so they might be published in other places. So you would have to, if it's not going to be in PubMed and have that PMID number, you're going to have to go in and manually add the citation, which is, it's a lot more work, obviously. So you have to add in the faculty member and then each individual author. So it's a little bit more arduous, that's for sure. So I personally think extract is the way to go when it comes to a renewal or new grant, because it just formats everything for you. These publications can be such a booger if you don't, especially when it gets into, you know, chronological order of the trainee and is it a past or current trainee. So that's, you know, that is my best advice to you. It's much easier in extract. Obviously, you know, you want to make sure you're doing a renewal or the new instructions. So one thing I can tell you about new is if you're doing a new application and you're trying to find, okay, I have a list of trainees here that would have been eligible to be on this training grant. Now, if you come across a trainee that has no publications, I would not list them in the table as no publications. I would just not put them on that list. And the reason why I say that is because you can cherry pick with a new application. You don't have to put them on there. And it's optional is what I'm saying. Now, if it's a renewal application, you have no choice because you have to do the trainees that were actually appointed to the training grant. So I hope that makes sense. Does anybody have any questions so far before I go on to table 6 about publications? No questions. Okay. I don't know if you guys are sleeping or maybe I'm talking too fast. Anyway, okay, so Table 6. This is a booger. A booger is my favorite word today, apparently. A booger of a table. This is going and it's talking about all of your like admissions records, basically all of the people that have applied to your program, that have been entered into your program, and they want to know all the information about them. So it basically gives insight to your program, your admissions data, how competitive is your program. And then they decide, the NIH decides how many training positions should be awarded based on your numbers. So of course, all of this information needs to be summarized in the program plan. So remember, I tell people like things over and over and over again a lot, but this is one of those things that your PI needs to write the narrative in the program plan based on the data in the data tables. So if you don't have your data done by the time they're ready to write the program plan, they're going to be like, I need these statistics. So I had this happen when I was doing my September deadline, and the PI kept saying, well, I need this information. And I said, I'm diligently working on these tables. But I know they can't finalize the program plan until they have all of your data. And then you want your data to support the program, right? So it's really important to get them accurate data, right? And to get it in a timely manner, right? But I know what it's like to work up on a deadline, and sometimes you're working on tables up until a week before, or a day before, or the day of. So not in a perfect world, right? So we have 6A, which is pre-docs, and then we have 6B, which is postdocs. So your pre-doc characteristics, it wants to talk about they want to count of like how many actually applied to your program, and then how many actually entered into what's the acceptance rate, and then it wants to know like GPAs, the averages and whatnot. Now postdocs, they count by degrees, so they want to know like how many MDs applied to the program, how many MD PhDs applied to the program, how many PhDs, how many other doctoral degrees. And then they want to know publication averages based on how many publications does your postdoc have, how many first author publications do they have. So both the pre-docs and the postdocs, they gather information on underrepresented groups, which I'll talk about, and they also want to know the prior institutions. So if it's an undergrad institution, where they got their bachelor's degree, or if it's a postdoc, where they got their doctoral degree, and they want you to list those prior institutions. So this is what the table looks like. So if you were doing, say, a pre-doc application, you're going to have 3 different programs you can see here. And these are basically from table 1. You're seeing I'm having, we are getting our, our census. Our applicants are coming from biochemistry, molecular and cellular biology, and systems biology. So you give them those departmental numbers in table 1, and here it's asking for, okay, we've had in Department of Biochemistry, we've had the total applicant pool, and these numbers are very low, obviously, but the number of all the individuals who formally applied to the program. So if they're just putting in a graduate application, they're only getting 45 applications per year, which usually it's probably, I would say, 1,000, but this is just for example purposes. And then that next column says the applicants that are eligible for support. And so this means exclude all non-citizens, because non-citizens are not eligible to be on the training grant. So what you could confer here is there's total 45 applicants, but only 30 of them are permanent residents and citizens. So 15 of them are non-citizens. We're excluding those from this number here. And then that next column is how many of the new entrants to the program. So based on your total applicant pool, we have 45, and only 6 actually entered into the program. So you take 6 out of 45. And then out of that 6, how many were eligible for support? So 3. So you can say here, only 3 of them are non-citizens, and 3 are citizens. So only 3 are actually eligible to be on the training grant. And then you can see in the last row, if it's a renewal, you can see how many were appointed to the grant, which is 3, right? So obviously that number is going to be different based on your renewal grant, and you have, like, say 8 slots. 3 of them came from molecular and cellular biology. So the second part of the pre-doc part is they talk about mean months of prior full-time research experience. So this is a very wonky question, because they're asking for how many full-time months have research experience do they have prior to coming to grad school. Well, it's not usually a whole lot. I mean, you do some in your bachelor's, but you have to figure out the full-time months. So this data, unfortunately, I don't think is necessarily collected by our graduate division. Now, I know some graduate programs on campus, and I know I have bioengineering, I think, on the line. Some ask for this data and some do not yet. So this data can be, a guesstimate. You could do a sample pull from your current trainees, but it's hard to know. So it just wants to know, based on how many new applicants come into your program, and then the new applicants eligible for support, and then how many were actually appointed to the grant. So that next box down is your prior institutions. So, okay, so Kelly, thanks for so that's good that you guys are collecting this data. You guys don't have to guess. Because I know graduate division does not. So prior institutions, it wants to know what the prior institutions are for all of your pre-docs. And so based on our last slide, we had 6 pre-docs be accepted into the program. So you are going to ideally here have 6 institutions, or in this case, we have 5 institutions, and then two of them would have come from the same institution. So if you accept 30, let's just say 30 applicants per year, you get let's just say you get 1,000 applications, and you accept 30, you're going to need to list 30 in prior institutions here. And what it means in parentheses is based on Cornell University, there's 3 of the trainees came from Cornell. So that's what that means. University of Virginia, there's nothing by it. So it just means 1 trainee came from there. Then of course that next column over, I guess I kind of skipped over that, sorry. This here would be those that are actually eligible for support, and then those were actually appointed to the grant. So it's a crazy amount of information. So this one, when they redid the tables, I think it was in 2020, this used to be broken out into 2 sections. It used to be broken out into underrepresented minorities, URMs, and those with disabilities. And now it's all kind of rolled up into one category, which they call underrepresented groups. So I believe graduate division still collects the data. It's split between URMs and underrepresented groups. So aggregating this data could be a little bit tricky, but we do collect it. So that's the good news. So again, you would, hold on, let me close the door. My dog is trying to get in on the conversation. So you can see here, you have to give information based on what were the amount of underrepresented minorities that were new entrants into the program, and then that were actually eligible for support, and that actually were appointed to the grant. Okay, sorry about that. And then that last row is the mean GPA average, and then the range is in parentheses. So they want to know the total applicant pool, those that were eligible for support, actually entered into the program, those were entered into the program and were eligible for support, and those were actually appointed to the training grant. It's a crazy amount of information. And then of course, at the end of the table, they go back for 5 years. You get 5 years of statistics for table or for 6A. And then they want the mean across all of those 5 years, which you have to figure out. So for postdocs, I think I said a little bit earlier, it goes by the count. So you have your total applicant pool. This is how many PhDs applied. This is how many, and hold on one second. Sorry, my dog is a nuisance sometimes, but I love him. So getting back to the postdoc counts, it counts by what type of degree they have. So in this case, you had 25 PhDs apply into the applicant that were in your pool that were actually eligible for support. Only 15 of them were, and then the new entrants eligible for support, and then how many were actually appointed to the grant. So, you know, same thing with your MDs, your dual degree holders, your MD PhDs. So the thing here is it really depends on what type of program you have. Because if you have a PhD program, you may not have any MDs that apply for your program, right? So it's okay that that's all zero. Or you have just an MD program and no PhDs are applying for it, but you may have, like, say, an MD PhD applying. So it's okay if you have zeros here. Like here, that last row says all zeros. But just remember, it is one of those things you need to track what type of postdocs are applying. So their table part 2 is slightly different, and they get into the mean number of publications that they are at the time of their applying. The total applicant pool, the mean number of publications was 3.5. That's ranging from 1 up into 9. And then the actual eligible for support, the new entrants into the program, yada, 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 right? That are eligible for support and then put on the grant. And then it wants to know how many first author papers does that postdoc have. Prior institutions, we went through that. Underrepresented groups, so same thing, same thing there. So you can see how much detail they're expecting. And I have to say, like, it's all about these URM numbers that NIH looks at. That this is, I would say, a pretty good program that they got 33% URM entered into their program, and then eligible for support is 50%. I think those are pretty good numbers. But that is really something that's a big initiative from NIH, and that is something they really look at. And this is like the hardest data to get. I'm laughing, but it's not funny. I'm almost crying. So, but, and I should say, on the postdoc information, there's no GPA. They don't care about your GPA anymore, and then they don't care about research experience. So it's not quite the same information, both on pre-doc and postdoc side. Again, your mean across all those 5 years of data that you're giving them. So for table 6A, pre-docs. So the graduate division, GEPA, graduate education, whatever office, graduate education and postdoc affairs, I don't know, something like that. They keep rebranding themselves. Grad division, they actually, because we have, you know, a graduate application process for, like, say, bioengineering, chemistry, biomedical sciences, they collect all of this data, woohoo, which is great. But they won't give you access to the data, but they'll give me access to the data. So when you have a grant due, and you have pre-docs on there, contact me and tell me what departments that you need this information for, and I will aggregate the data for you and give it to you.
Wait.
Wait. Yes.
So you're saying you have that data?
Mm-hmm. You didn't ask me for it, did you?
Not that I know of.
No.
Maybe Irene did, but I didn't.
I can't remember.
You know,
I thought you guys did your own thing over there.
we do, but interfaces involves 9 other programs and departments, and a lot of them don't track this. Some of them do.
So it's interesting. Yeah. So we can, this is a good conversation for offline, but other people need to hear it. Yeah, they do track a lot of programs, but not every single one. But
Oh,
if there's a
okay.
formal graduate application process for that program, then yes, they should be tracking it. So
Okay. All right.
yes, I
Good.
do have the data. And it's especially helpful when I can aggregate the data in Tableau. It's much easier, right? Because you're trying to aggregate, pull
Yeah.
all this different information.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Um,
I had to get up off the floor because when you said that, I fell out of my chair. So, yeah, sorry about that. Thanks.
Yeah, well, and this is just one of those things. It's like, people just don't necessarily know about it, right? And that's
Yeah.
why,
Irene probably knew and just knew that which
yeah, and it's
did and
just,
didn't and what GEPA would have and not have. So I'm
yeah.
not too worried about it. But yeah, that's good information for me to know. Thank
So
you.
this is kind of like a snapshot I took of the Tableau reports that I get from them. So you can see, your graduate programs here, right? But I know like under biology, how many there's like it's a school, the division of biology, they've got so many, little divisions in there. So this is, I mean, this is probably an old snapshot. So yeah, but I do my best. Now, one of the things is it doesn't track JDP, the Joint Doctoral Program with San Diego State. So if you have one of those programs, that's going to be hard data to get because you have to go down to San Diego State and get that information. And you know how hard it is just to find the right contact person for some of this stuff. So but this is kind of like the dashboard that I get, and then I download it in an Excel, and then I'll manipulate the data and then send it back to you. But they don't like, all of these the contact departments to see all this information. So that's why I have to do it for you. So Wilma's gonna fall on the ground now because she's going through this majorly. This is a horrible part right here. So is 6A, it's really easy in my mind. It's much easier, right? Because we collect the data, period. We collect the data. For postdocs, we don't collect the data, which is just there's no formal process for, I mean, yes, if you hire someone, right, that's already an entrant. But as far as applications, no one's tracking those applications. And the reason why I say that is because most times when a postdoc wants a job, they're just going to email, they're going to find Dr. Smith at UCSD deals with stem cells, and they're going to just find his email on the web and send him an email and say, I want to come join your lab. I'm awesome. Well, how do you track basically all those CVs that are getting sent to your PI, right? Unless your PI is very diligent, saves all of those CVs for you, which, and sometimes it depends on the PI. Sometimes they're getting 10 of these a week. So it's all very fragmented, right? And so it's very difficult to wrangle this data. I'll use that word. There is a system on campus called the RSAS system, and this can give you some information, but again, this is only for those postdocs that actually have been hired. So it's not going to give you all the information that you need. And you can see here, it doesn't give you any stats on disability or URN. So that's an issue, huge issue right there, because we know that NIH wants that information. Um, so it's difficult. This is a big pain, and it would be nice if we had a blanket postdoc application process. One of the reasons why we don't is because of the UAW contract, and there's so many restrictions in there, and they want everything to be equal. And we can't just put, one application out there and someone has to fill it out every time, which is quite a bummer. So like I said, this is very difficult data to come up with. Yeah. So there's different ways of doing this. You could survey say if you have 20 participating faculty on this grant, you can survey them and say approximately how many you know, how many CVs have you received over the last, 5 years? And then, were those people eligible? What were their, how many publications did they have? How many first authors? I mean, you would have to look in every single CV, right? And so and I've had some admins that say, I have 200 CVs here. Should I look through all of them? I go, no, just look through 10 of them or 15 or 20 of them and take a sample of, of the type of pool you have. This is one of those things that the NIH reviewers know and this is a common issue all over all the institutions in the country. Nobody has an easy time collecting this data. So the reviewers know that this is difficult to find, but yet you need it. So they know sometimes these numbers are going to be, well, like I like to say, a guesstimate. It's not going to be a perfect. So, you know, you can say in the program plan, hey, we don't collect this data, but we will next time. They really kind of frown upon that. They expect you at this point in time that you should be collecting the data, even if, we don't. So now you could, as each individual program, you could set up your own application process. So say if someone does blindly email your PI, you could direct them and say, hey, here's a Google form, here's a Qualtrics form, I need you to fill this out. Now that would be very, work intensive, right? Having to redirect every single one of them, whether they do it or not. So, but that would be a way to collect your data. So if you did some sort of not like a formal application, maybe like a research interest form. So that is the upside and downside to 6A and 6B. It can be very difficult. So looking at extract, this is obviously a lot of information to put in to extract. So remember, they want the last 5 years. So you have to put in here the last 5, starting with the last closed, basically, academic year. So, and then it's going to go basically years 23 to 24, 22 to 23 and down. So for the last 5 years, and then there's that mean summary. So basically this is what it's going to look like, and you're going to have to add in all that data. Now for 6A, it's really just kind of copying and pasting, because I'm going to give you all this data, but you still have to enter it in. So it's a little bit of a pain, but you're going to have to put in all of the departments, all those GPAs, what the mean GPA, the low GPA, the high GPA, the total applicant pool, those that were eligible, those who actually entered into the program, and then those who are eligible for support. So again, it's a ton of data. Again, they ask for those mean months of prior research support, the prior institutions. Now this one is like even more time intensive, because you have to go in, add each university separately, and then add, okay, we took one trainee in from Emory, and then yes, he was a citizen and he was eligible for support. And then you have to put the URM numbers in there, of course. Postdoc data, very similar. You have to put in all your counts, go ahead and edit all those. Same thing with publications. I want to know how many total publications, and then how many first author publications for the last 5 years. So, there's prior institutions and the URM numbers. So the one thing that's interesting, that I found them really interesting, is the underrepresented groups. It's defined by NSF, and there is they put a NOFO, or whatever you call it, a FOA out from NIH about this. But I think a lot of people are not necessarily familiar with what is an underrepresented in sciences group. So I wanted to go over that. And I went over this during our training tracking session, but I wanted to repeat it again. There's 3 groups. A is your racial and ethnic groups. B is by disability. And then C is disadvantaged backgrounds. So I think it's important to put in there, what is a disadvantaged background? So it has to meet the criteria of 2 or more of the following criteria. Were they homeless? Were they in the foster care system at some time? Were they eligible for the free reduced lunch plan for over 2 years? Do they have their parents never who completed a bachelor's degree? Were they eligible for federal Pell Grants, or did they receive WIC? So if they just have to be 2 of those, or they grew up in a rural area. So you can actually go to this website, type in your zip code, and it'll tell you if you're in a rural area. So I actually put in here, because I live in Vista, which I don't think is that rural, but apparently it's considered a rural area. Both my parents did not graduate from college, so I am considered a disadvantaged background, which I never thought I was. So I thought that was really interesting. Now whoever's like collecting the data in GEPA, I hope they're doing it this way. But your numbers could I think could dramatically increase if you are actually using the NSF guideline for what is considered an underrepresented group. Okay, so best practices, coming up to the end of my presentation here. For the last 5 years for pre-docs, it really should go by academic years because they go by academics. And for postdocs, it could be the academic year or the grant year or the fiscal year, however you want to do it. It's just needs to be consistent. And keeping good records. And this is, I just preach this all the time. Trainee tracking, track your trainees, their applicants, track everything about them. Because, just when they enter in your program, if they get on your grant, you're going to have to track them for the next 15 years anyway. So you got to become really good friends with your trainees. So what I do have, if it's for aggregating your data, because you have to come up with the ranges and stuff, I do have Excel versions of 6A and 6B on the website, on my website. So if you find that helpful for you. And then this is just, I'll be posting this video today on the website. And then next week, we're hoping to do data tables 7 and 8. And then we probably won't have, I think it's the 21st. I'm going to be traveling, and so then we won't meet again until the new year. So I know I've been just chatting. Who has questions for me? And it doesn't necessarily.
This was very helpful.
Oh, good. And you don't have to have questions about necessarily data tables. I mean, it's an office hour, so it's just if you're stuck on something right now, feel free to just unmute yourself and talk. So.
I did have a question. I'm new to fund management at UCSD, and I understand that those unallowable expenses on a training grant have to be moved off, but there is a table with the rates or the amounts that should be moved off. Do you know who I get in contact with to find out that data?
Do you mean for postdoc benefits, or you mean?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so for postdoc benefits, it's on my website. Let me check. Post-award, award management, postdoc benefits. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, right. Okay, so if you go under post-award, award management, it'll say here.
Perfect. That's exactly what I was looking for.
Yeah, so these three, this disability, life, and state workers' comp, are unallowed, have to be moved off to discretionary funds. And approximately for FY 23-24, it's 6.18% off the CBR rate that needs to be moved off.
Wonderful. Thank you.
So yeah, that's a great question. And that's one of those pet peeves about training grants. I was really hopeful. I'm so naive sometimes. I was really hopeful when Oracle got launched. If some of you know Oracle, I mean, what we had before, I was like, oh, great, we have a new system. We can really just figure out a great way to administer training grants. We got a new system, and it's just as bad as the old one, as far as I'm concerned. You still have to do all these after the fact transfers.
Thank you.
So you're welcome. Marisol, what department are you in?
OBGYN ReproMed?
Oh, okay. So you're dealing with Pam Mellons, right?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of sad Pam is retiring, and
She's amazing.
yeah, she's amazing. She's one of those PIs that does her own data tables, which I was always like,
Yes.
I'm not worthy, you know.
She does a great job and is always timely, very proactive. It's amazing to work with her. And yes, I'm sorry that she'll be retiring as well.
But her replacements, I met her replacements, and they seem very, very good too.
Dr. Kaufman, yes.
Yes.
He's very conscientious.
Very conscientious.
Very, the thought process is the dedication and detail orientation is very high. So he'll be a good replacement.
Yeah, and it's just so important with these training programs that you have these, and it's usually, it's not because they're not getting paid extra to do this, right? It's because of their passion and their love for research and training and stuff. So, but I'll stay on the line if anybody else wants to ask questions. And then put your email in the chat if you want me to add you to the UC Training Grants Consortium. So I'm really excited about that and cross collaborating with the other campuses. I've done a little bit of that so far, and I'm really I think it could be very beneficial for all of us. Hopefully, and we can decrease on the duplicity and the inefficiency that comes along with training grants.
I'm sorry, Jill, I was a couple of minutes late to the meeting. What is this email list?
Oh, okay. So I met with Irene the other day. So, and Irene always gives me the best ideas. So I'm already doing a consortium with like UCLA and UC Irvine, but we decided we're going to create like a Google group, and anybody from within the 10 UC schools that has a training grant, whether they're a PI or an administrator, can join this group, and then they can, email the group and say, I have a question about this, blah, 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 blah.
Wow.
Anyone can, respond. I can respond as a moderator. I'll have a couple moderators. So I want it to be like cross collaboration. Maybe UC Santa Cruz has a great idea about this. And so, I thought, let's share ideas and let's make this a little bit easier on ourselves. And, one of the reasons why this really came up, and Kelly was talking to Irene, was, this whole UAW implementation. It's been very painful for so many people and across all the campuses. Yeah. So I think it's one of those things we have to work together for solutions. So, yeah. So I'm on my soapbox, my training grant soapbox.
Somebody has to get up there because from what I understand, it's really, really gnarly.
It's crazy. And yeah, it's crazy. And so anyway, I'm trying. So
thank you.
Hi, Jill.
Hi, Matthew. How are you?
Hi. I'm good. Thank you. Thank you so much again for doing this, and thanks for today.
Oh, yeah.
I just had a quick question going back to data table 5.
Sure.
I'm looking at the one that was previously submitted for our T32, and it's in alphabetical order by faculty member surname. Is this acceptable, or will I need to rearrange things to have it in chronological order?
Okay, so it goes by alphabetical name by faculty member.
Yeah.
And then it goes by whether the trainee is past or current, and then it goes in chronological order by the name of the trainee. So but you're not working on a renewal yet, right?
No, I was just bracing for the future when I do one.
Yeah, you would have to correct that. And, you brought up a good point. I mean, well, and you have a couple of years because you guys just got renewed. It
Right.
seems you guys just got it renewed. You could use extract. Hopefully extract will be, even more robust by the time you get there. And so I just really recommend doing extract because it already has your table 8 data in there. And it does, it's a great place to store all the information as well. But shoot, what was I going to say? But one thing I was going to mention, so some people will look at the renewal or look at the last application and they look at that application thinking that it's like a Bible, like, okay, well, they submitted this to the agency, it must be correct. And a lot of times that information that they submitted maybe wasn't correct. So you still have to be skeptical, is what I'm trying to say. So say someone put a publication on there that maybe was prior to their training at UCSD, and they put it on there incorrectly. Don't just assume, oh, well, I'm doing the renewal, I'll just, this is what they did last time, it must be correct, is what I'm trying to say. I would caution yourself, you know what I mean? Don't just assume whatever they did last time was correct. Now I know who your predecessor is, and so yes, she probably did everything correct because she's really good, but I don't find that the case always. It wasn't always the case with your grant that you work on. So just always, just keep that in the back of your mind. Everything should be verified as much as possible, the data.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you, Joe.
Long-winded answer.
Hi, Jill.
Hi, Kylie, how are you?
Good. Thank you for having this. I was going to ask, so I'll send you an email, but MBTG is going to be renewed this year in May. I
Okay.
think. And so that's why I'm here. Betsy was
Molecular
really,
biophysics, you mean Betsy's
yeah,
already?
it was,
Isn't she doing it early? Or
she
maybe
said it was due in May of 2024.
Oh, okay. It seems like she just renewed it, but maybe not. Okay,
Um,
I'll put you on the list.
for this table 6A.
Mhm.
And then also, do you know who I could contact to get access to RSAS?
Yeah, her name would be, I think it's Jenny Solomon.
Jenny Solomon. Okay, because I am going to also be working on the RPPR for
Donahue.
the cancer training grant in
Oh,
chemistry.
for Yang.
And yeah, for Jean Yang. And that one has postdocs, and I'm gonna have to start on it now because there's a lot, 34 years.
Oh yeah. Well, and
Um,
I mean, just so you know, Kylie, like I used to work on that grant 20 years ago.
oh, really?
Yeah, with Laura Casterjon. So her name is all over stuff. I don't know, I assume. But she used to be Dan's assistant for years, and she was like the key.
She did a lot of work, I think, because when I asked Ozma, I was like, how did you guys do this before? And Ozma just told me that she never did anything for the postdocs, and she didn't know how it was done. And I feel like when I stepped in starting last year's the first time like I ever had to do, or like the department ever had to do so much for, like, besides Dan's.
Yeah,
of course,
yeah,
this
it's
is
kind of crazy, huh? But yeah, so if you get to that point, you have questions on that one. I know Maddie, Maddie Osborne. Maddie's
She left for
she's in my
help.
department now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because she's hypercare. Is she hypercare? No, I don't know what they call that thing. Like, but anyway, she's amazing. If
Yeah,
and
she is amazing.
yeah, if you ever have questions on I call it the Donahue grant because it was originally Donahue. So if you need help with that one, let me know because you can shake my brain up. I can remember something.
Perfect. Okay.
So.
Yeah. But yeah, I think I'll look up Solomon. I found like a website online for RSAS, but then